Tonight, let's journey across wine, dark seas with the most famous traveler in all of literature. Pull up your blankets. We're going to ancient Greece. This is the story of a man who just wanted to go home. 10 years at war, then 10 more years lost at sea. 20 years away from everyone he loved. His name was Odysseus. You might know him as Ulysses, the Roman version, the clever one, they called him. The man of many ways. And this is the Odyssey, Homer's epic poem from nearly 3,000 years ago. It's about that long journey home, and all the monsters and gods and magic along the way. But you know what? It's also about his wife Penelope, waiting year after year, never giving up hope. It's about their son, growing up without a father. It's about faith and patience and what home really means. These are questions we still ask ourselves today, aren't they? What makes a home? Who waits for us there? Homer sang these verses around firesides in ancient Greece. People would gather to hear about Odysseus, just like you're listening now. Some things never change. Now, while Odysseus was lost at sea, something terrible was happening at his home. Over 100 men had moved into his palace. They called themselves suitors. They wanted to marry Penelope and take over the kingdom. They assumed Odysseus was dead. After all, who survives 20 years of war and wandering? Every day, these men ate Odysseus's food, drank his wine, slaughtered his animals. They were destroying everything he'd worked for, and there was nothing anyone could do. But Penelope was clever too. She told the suitors she'd choose a husband when she finished weaving a burial shroud for Odysseus's elderly father. Reasonable enough, right? Here's the trick though. Every night, she would secretly unravel what she'd woven during the day. For 3 years, that shroud was never finished. That's the kind of cleverness she shared with her husband. Meanwhile, up on Mount Olympus, the gods were having their own arguments about Odysseus. Some wanted to help him. Others wanted him to suffer forever. His greatest champion was Athena, goddess of wisdom. She loved Odysseus because he was clever like her. She begged Zeus to let the poor man finally go home. But Poseidon, god of the sea, absolutely hated Odysseus. And when the sea god hates you, traveling by ship becomes a real problem. Why did Poseidon hate him so much? Well, Odysseus had blinded Poseidon's son, a one-eyed giant called Polyphemus. We'll get to that story, don't worry. It's one of the best parts. When our story begins, Odysseus has been trapped for 7 years on an island with a beautiful goddess named Calypso. Sounds nice, right? But it wasn't. Every day, he sat on the shore and wept, staring across the water toward home. Calypso loved him and wouldn't let him leave. Even paradise can be a prison. You know. Finally, Zeus ordered Calypso to release him. With tears in her eyes, she helped him build a raft. After 7 years, Odysseus was finally sailing toward home. Picture this one man on a tiny raft, surrounded by endless water. No crew, no supplies, just hope and determination. That's where his journey home truly begins. But Poseidon spotted him. And the sea god smiled a terrible smile. He wasn't done punishing Odysseus yet, not by a long shot. A storm unlike anything you can imagine tore that little raft to pieces. Waves as tall as mountains crashed over Odysseus. This was a god's anger made real. For days, Odysseus swam. His arms burned, his lungs screamed for rest. But he kept going. What choice did he have? He'd survived too much to drown now. Finally, he washed up on a beach. Naked, half drowned, completely exhausted. He crawled under an olive tree and fell into the deepest sleep of his life. Nearby, a princess named Nausicaa had come to the river with her maidens. They were washing clothes and playing with a ball. Just a normal day for them. When the ball went astray and the girls' shrieks woke Odysseus, he emerged from the bushes looking like a wild man. All the maidens fled except brave young Nausicaa. And here's where we see why they called him clever. He didn't grab her or beg pathetically. He spoke to her like a princess, compared her to a goddess, flattery and respect together. Charmed by his words and dignity, Nausicaa gave him clothes and directions to her father's palace. This was the land of the Phaeacians, famous for their ships and hospitality. The Phaeacian king and queen welcomed this stranger with open arms. They fed him, clothed him, asked nothing of him. This was how guests were treated in the ancient world. But when the court bard began to sing about the Trojan War, about the famous heroes there, Odysseus couldn't help himself. He wept. He hid his face and wept. The king noticed those tears. "Who are you, stranger?" he asked, "that songs of Troy make you weep so?" And Odysseus finally revealed himself. "I am Odysseus," he said. The whole court gasped. Odysseus, the great hero of Troy, the man who devised the wooden horse.
He was supposed to be dead.
But here he stood alive. And then Odysseus began to tell his story. All of it. The monsters, the magic, the gods, the impossible escapes. This is what we'll explore together, step by step. We'll meet one-eyed giants and singing sirens. We'll visit the land of the dead and dodge monsters that devour ships whole. We'll see why this story has lasted 3,000 years. So get comfortable. Let me tell you about Odysseus and his long way home. If you drift off to sleep along the way, that's perfectly fine. The sea will still be there when you wake. Let's start with our hero himself. Who exactly was Odysseus? Before he was the lost wanderer, he was one of the greatest Greek warriors at Troy. But here's the thing that made him different from the others. While Achilles had his strength and Ajax his size, Odysseus had something more valuable. He had his mind. They called him polytropos in Greek. It means many-turning, many-minded, the man of twists and turns. He could think his way out of anything, or into anything, for that matter. You've probably heard of the Trojan horse. That was his idea. After 10 years of war, when nothing else worked, Odysseus thought of hiding soldiers inside a giant wooden horse. The Trojans thought it was a gift, a peace offering. They wheeled it right through their gates. That night, while Troy slept, the Greeks crept out and opened the city doors. Troy fell that night. 10 years of war, ended by one clever trick. That's the kind of man Odysseus was. Not the strongest, but absolutely the smartest. But cleverness has its costs. Odysseus made enemies along the way. He tricked people, deceived gods, always had another scheme. Some things would come back to haunt him. What I love about Odysseus is that he's not a perfect hero. He lies when he needs to. He's proud, sometimes too proud. He makes terrible mistakes. He's wonderfully human. He lies constantly in this poem, by the way. Even when he doesn't need to. He gives false names, invents backstories. It's like he can't help himself. Lying is just part of who he is. But through it all, one thing never changes. He wants to go home. No matter what temptations he faces, no matter what's offered to him, he always chooses home. Now let's talk about Penelope, because honestly, she might be the real hero of this story. Think about what she endures while Odysseus is having his adventures. She married Odysseus when they were young. They had a son, Telemachus. Then the war came and her husband sailed away. She had no idea it would be 20 years. 20 years. Can you imagine? Waiting, hoping, never knowing if he was alive or dead. Raising their son alone. Running a kingdom by herself. And she did it all brilliantly. She kept the kingdom together. She protected their son. She held off those horrible suitors with nothing but her wits. Remember that shroud trick? Weaving by day, unraveling by night. She kept that deception going for 3 years. Like husband, like wife. They were perfect for each other. The suitors eventually caught her unraveling the shroud. A servant betrayed her secret. But even then, Penelope found other ways to delay. She never gave up hope. What kept her going all those years? Faith. Pure faith that her husband was still alive, still trying to reach her. And in the end, she was right to believe. Here's something beautiful about their relationship. They're equals. Both clever, both patient, both faithful. In a world of heroes and gods, their partnership stands out. Now let's meet their son, Telemachus. He was just a baby when Odysseus left for Troy. He grew up hearing stories about a father he couldn't remember. Imagine growing up like that. Strange men in your house, eating your food, courting your mother. Everyone treating you like you don't matter, Because your father's gone. For years, Telemachus just endured it. What could he do? He was young, outnumbered. The suitors laughed at him when he tried to assert himself. It was humiliating. But then Athena came to him, disguised as an old friend of his father's. She told him it was time to act. Time to become a man. Time to search for news of Odysseus. So young Telemachus set out on his own journey. He sailed to visit the other Greek heroes who'd returned from Troy. Maybe someone knew if his father lived. He met old Nestor, the wisest of the Greeks. He met Menelaus, whose wife Helen had caused the whole Trojan War. They told him stories of his father's bravery. For the first time, Telemachus really understood who his father was. Not just a name or a memory, but a real man. A hero. Someone worth waiting for. That journey changed him. He left home as a frustrated boy and came back as something closer to a man. He was ready to fight for his family now. The Odyssey is partly a coming-of-age story for Telemachus. He has to grow up without his father, then finally meet him as an adult. It's something many of us understand. Now let's talk about the gods, starting with Athena. She's not just any goddess. She's the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and heroic endeavor, and she adores Odysseus. Why does Athena love him so much? Because he's like her. He solves problems with his brain, not just his muscles. He thinks before he acts, usually. Throughout the Odyssey, Athena intervenes to help him. She speaks on his behalf to Zeus. She guides Telemachus. She appears in disguises to give advice. She's always there. Greek gods loved disguises, and Athena was no exception. She appears as old men, young women, even just a voice on the wind. You never know when she's watching. There's a wonderful scene later where Athena and Odysseus finally talk openly. They're like old friends, teasing each other about their mutual love of deception. It's quite charming. On the other side, we have Poseidon, god of the sea, brother of Zeus, lord of all waters. And for reasons we'll explore, he really wants Odysseus to suffer. Every time Odysseus gets close to home, Poseidon whips up another storm. Every time hope appears, the sea god crushes it. It's relentless, this divine persecution. Why does Poseidon hate him so much? Because Odysseus blinded Polyphemus, the Cyclops. And Polyphemus was Poseidon's son. Never blind a god's child, even a monster. Polyphemus prayed to his father for revenge. Let Odysseus never reach home, he begged. Or if he does, let him arrive alone and find his house in Chaos. Some prayers get answered. Now let's meet some of the other immortals. Calypso, whose name means the concealer, is a nymph goddess who lives on a hidden island paradise. When Odysseus washed up on her shores, she fell in love with him. Desperately, completely. She nursed him back to health and made him her companion. She offered him immortality if he would stay with her forever. Think about that. Never aging, never dying, living in paradise with a goddess. He said no. For 7 years, she kept him there, hoping he'd change his mind. But every day he sat on the rocks and cried, staring toward home. Her love couldn't replace what he'd lost. There's something sad about Calypso. She genuinely loved him, in her way. When Zeus finally ordered her to let him go, she wept. Even goddesses can have broken hearts. Then there's Circe, another goddess, but very different from Calypso. Circe is a sorceress who lives on the island of Aea. She has a habit of turning visitors into animals. When Odysseus's men first found her palace, she welcomed them warmly, fed them delicious food, then touched them with her wand and turned them all into pigs, just like that. Only one man escaped to warn Odysseus. And what did our hero do? He went straight to her palace alone. Brave or foolish, you decide. Probably both. Luckily, Hermes met him on the way and gave him a magical herb called moly. It would protect him from Circe's magic. The gods do sometimes help those who help themselves. When Circe's spell bounced off him, she was shocked, then impressed, then, inevitably, attracted. There's a pattern here with Odysseus and powerful women, isn't there? Circe turned his men back to human. She became their host instead of their captor. Odysseus stayed with her for a year, gathering strength and knowledge for the journey ahead. It was Circe who told him he needed to visit the underworld. To reach home, you must first go to the land of the dead, she said, not the most comforting travel advice. Now let's talk about the monsters, and there are plenty of them. First, there's Polyphemus, the Cyclops. One-eyed giants who lived alone, tending sheep. When Odysseus and his men explored his cave, Polyphemus trapped them inside with a boulder no human could move. Then he started eating them. 2 men for dinner that night. Picture it. Trapped in darkness with a giant who eats your friends. No way out. No weapons that could hurt him. Most people would just give up and wait to die. But not Odysseus. He had a plan. He offered the Cyclops wine, strong wine, getting him drunk. And when asked his name, he said it was nobody. Remember that? When the giant passed out drunk, Odysseus and his men heated a wooden stake in the fire. Then, together, they drove it into the Cyclops' single eye. Polyphemus screamed so loud that other Cyclopes came running. "Who hurt you?" they called. "Nobody," he answered. "Nobody is killing me." So they left him alone. The blind giant moved the boulder to let his sheep out to graze. He felt each one's back to make sure no men rode them. But he didn't check underneath. Odysseus had thought of that too. Here's where Odysseus made his big mistake. Safe on his ship, sailing away, he couldn't resist shouting his real name. "My name is Odysseus," he yelled. Pride got the better of him. And that's when Polyphemus prayed to Poseidon. Now the god knew exactly who to punish. One moment of pride would cost Odysseus 10 more years of suffering. Then there's Scylla, a monster with 6 heads on long necks, each with 3 rows of teeth. She lived in a cliff face, snatching sailors from passing ships. Across from Scylla was Charybdis, a massive whirlpool that swallowed ships whole. Odysseus had to sail between them. Lose 6 men to Scylla, or lose everyone to Charybdis. He chose to pass closer to Scylla. 6 of his men were snatched away and devoured as the others watched. Sometimes leadership means making impossible choices. The sirens might be the most famous monsters of all. Beautiful creatures whose singing was irresistible. Any sailor who heard them would steer toward the rocks and die. Odysseus wanted to hear their song, but lived to tell about it. So he had his men plug their ears with wax and tie him to the mast. No matter how he begged, they couldn't untie him. He heard the siren's song, the only man who ever did and survived. What did they sing about? Knowledge. They promised to tell him everything. All the secrets of the world. Not all dangers were monsters. The cattle of the sun god Helios were just ordinary cows, grazing on an island. But they were sacred. Eating them meant death. Circe had warned Odysseus, "Don't touch those cattle." But his men were starving, trapped on the island by storms. When Odysseus fell asleep, they slaughtered and ate the sacred herd. Helios was furious. He demanded Zeus punish the men who'd eaten his cattle. And Zeus agreed. A thunderbolt destroyed their ship. Every single crewman drowned. Only Odysseus survived, clinging to wreckage. He'd been asleep when they ate the cattle, so he was spared. But he lost everything. His last ship, his last companions. That's how he ended up washing ashore on Calypso's island. Alone, shipwrecked, utterly defeated. From 12 ships and hundreds of men, reduced to 1 survivor. Let's talk about the strangest part of his journey. The trip to the underworld. Circe told him he needed to consult the dead prophet Tiresias to find his way home. He sailed to the edge of the world, where the living meet the dead. He dug a pit and filled it with blood from sacrificed sheep. The ghosts came for the blood. They needed it to speak. Tiresias, the blind prophet, told him his future. "You will reach home, but not easily. You'll find your house full of trouble. You'll have to set things right with blood." Then Odysseus saw his mother's ghost. He didn't even know she'd died. She'd died of grief, waiting for him. 3 times he tried to embrace her. 3 times she slipped through his arms. He met the ghosts of his fallen comrades from Troy. Achilles, the greatest warrior. Ajax, who'd killed himself. Agamemnon, murdered by his own wife. Death had come for all of them. Achilles said something that might surprise you. Better to be a poor farmer's servant in the world of the living than king of all the dead. Even glory means nothing in death. Now let's look at the villains of our story. The suitors aren't monsters or gods. They're just men. And in some ways, that makes them worse. Antinous was their leader. Young, handsome, from a good family. Also cruel, greedy, and utterly without honor. He's the one who first plots to murder Telemachus. Eurymachus was smoother, more political. He pretended to be reasonable while being just as predatory. The kind of man who smiles while plotting your destruction. There were over 100 of them, eating through Odysseus's wealth. They'd been doing this for years, assuming the king would never return. They were wrong. They abused beggars for entertainment. They mistreated servants. They pressured Penelope constantly. In Homer's world, they've broken every law of hospitality. They deserve what's coming. Now let's meet some of the good people. Eumaeus was Odysseus's swineherd, a slave who'd been with the family since boyhood. He remained loyal through everything. When a ragged beggar appeared at his door, Eumaeus shared his little food without hesitation. He didn't know it was Odysseus in disguise. He was just being kind. Eumaeus still spoke of his missing master with love and loyalty after 20 years. That tells you something about what kind of man Odysseus was to those who served him. Euryclea was the old nurse who'd raised Odysseus from infancy. She'd also nursed Telemachus. She knew the family's secrets better than anyone. She would be the first to recognize him when he returned in disguise. Washing his feet, she felt an old scar and knew immediately. He had to silence her quickly. And then there's Argos. Just a dog, but one of the most touching characters in all literature. He was Odysseus's hunting dog, now ancient and neglected. When Odysseus passed by in his beggar's disguise, Argos recognized him. After 20 years, the old dog lifted his head, wagged his tail, then died, his wait finally over. Odysseus couldn't acknowledge the dog without blowing his cover. He just wiped away a tear and kept walking. It's such a small moment, but it says everything about homecoming. Let's not forget Nausicaa, the Phaeacian princess who found Odysseus on the beach. She was young, maybe 17, brave and kind beyond her years. When all her handmaidens ran screaming from the wild, looking stranger, Nausicaa stood her ground. She saw a person in need, not a threat. That takes real courage. Homer hints that she might have fallen a little in love with him. But Odysseus was going home to his wife. Nausicaa would find her own story someday. Her parents, King Alcinous and Queen Arete, represent the ideal of hospitality. They took in a stranger, asked nothing, gave everything. That was sacred in the ancient world. The Phaeacians gave Odysseus more than he could have asked for. Treasure, clothes, and most importantly, transport home on their magical swift ships. Keenness to strangers matters. Looking at all these characters together, you see what makes the Odyssey so rich. It's not just one hero's journey. It's a tapestry of people, each with their own story. Odysseus is different with each of them. A supplicant with Nausicaa, a lover with Calypso, a trickster with Polyphemus, a warrior returning. He contains multitudes. And through it all, Penelope waits. Her journey is internal, a battle fought with patience and cleverness. In many ways, she's as heroic as her husband. Telemachus comes of age, growing from a boy into a man worthy of his father. Their eventual reunion will be one of the most powerful moments in the story. Athena watches over them all, pulling strings, arranging circumstances. The gods may be powerful, but they're invested in mortal stories. Maybe that's why they help us. And Poseidon keeps trying to stop him, furious and implacable. Even the sea god can't prevent fate, but he can make the journey much, much harder. We should mention Odysseus's crew, even though none of them survive. They're not heroes, just ordinary men caught in extraordinary circumstances. They make mistakes. They open the bag of winds too soon. They eat the sacred cattle. But they're not villains. They're just human with human weaknesses. Odysseus loses them all, one by one. Each death weighs on him. Being a leader means watching people who trusted you die. It's part of what makes him so wary. Along the way, they meet other memorable figures. Aeolus, keeper of the winds, who gave Odysseus a bag containing all the winds that might blow him off course. They were so close to home, they could see Ithaca. Then his men opened the bag, thinking it was treasure. All the winds burst out and blew them back across the ocean. Then there were the Laestrygonians, a race of giant cannibals who destroyed 11 of Odysseus's 12 ships. They speared sailors like fish. Only one ship escaped. The lotus eaters weren't violent at all. They just offered magical flowers that made people forget everything. Forget home, forget duty, forget who they were. Odysseus had to drag those men back to the ship by force. Sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't a monster. It's the temptation to just stop trying. By the time Odysseus reaches the Phaeacians, he's lost everyone. Every ship, every companion. He's the only survivor of the voyage home from Troy. The whole middle section of the Odyssey is Odysseus telling his own story. He's an unreliable narrator, probably. He might be exaggerating. He might be lying. After all, we've established he's a liar. How much of his adventure is exactly true? How much is improved for a good audience? We'll never know. That's part of the fun. Meanwhile, back in Ithaca, Penelope looks at the same stars her husband sees from across the ocean. They're still connected, even after all these years. She has her own court of characters, loyal servants and treacherous ones. Some of the maids have been sleeping with the suitors. Betrayal is everywhere. Her relationship with Telemachus is complicated. She wants to protect him. He wants to protect her. Both feel helpless against the suitors. Until now. The servants watch the suitors with silent hatred. They know who these men really are. They're just waiting. Justice will come eventually. After everything, after all the characters we've met, it comes down to this. One man on a ship, finally sailing home. Almost there, almost. The Phaeacians deposit sleeping Odysseus on the beach of Ithaca. He wakes up and doesn't recognize it at first. It's been so long. Everything looks different. Athena appears to him and confirms it. You're home, Odysseus, but you can't just walk in. Your house is full of enemies. We need a plan. She transforms him into an old beggar, unrecognizable. This way he can enter his own home and see what he's dealing with. The reconnaissance begins. So the great hero of Troy, the man who outsmarted a Cyclops and survived Poseidon's wrath, enters his own home as a beggar. Sometimes you have to become nothing to become everything. Now you know the characters. The clever hero and his faithful wife. The boy becoming a man. The goddess who helps and the god who hinders. The monsters and the mortals. Next, we'll follow the story itself step by step. All the adventures, all the homecoming. But for now, let their faces settle in your mind as you rest. Let's start where Homer starts. Not with Odysseus on some distant shore, but with the gods themselves. High on Olympus, they're discussing the fate of mortals. Athena approaches her father Zeus with a complaint. Odysseus has suffered enough, she says. He's been trapped on Calypso's island for 7 years. It's time to let him go home. Zeus agrees. He'll send Hermes to order Calypso to release the hero. But Athena has another idea. While that's happening, she'll go help Odysseus's son. She appears in Ithaca disguised as Mentor, an old family friend. She finds Telemachus sitting among the suitors, daydreaming about a father he's never really known. The boy is miserable. These men have taken over his home, disrespected his mother, and he can do nothing about it. He feels utterly powerless. Athena, as Mentor, tells him to act like a man, call an assembly, denounce the suitors publicly, then sail out to find news of your father. It's time to grow up. Telemachus does exactly that. He calls the first assembly Ithaca has seen in 20 years. He stands before his people and accuses the suitors of destroying his household. The suitors just laugh at him. Antinous blames Penelope for leading them on. Blame your clever mother, he says. She's the one who tricked us with her weaving. Then something remarkable happens. 2 eagles appear in the sky, tearing at each other. An old prophet interprets it. Death is coming for the suitors. He says they just laugh at him too. That night, Telemachus prepares to sail. He doesn't tell his mother, knowing she'd worry. With Athena's help, he gathers a crew and slips away under cover of darkness. This is the beginning of Telemachus's own Odyssey. A small journey compared to his father's, but vital for his growth. Every hero needs a first adventure. His first stop is Pylos, home of old King Nestor. They arrive during a great sacrifice to Poseidon. Hundreds of people on the beach, feasting in the god's honor. Nestor welcomes the young stranger warmly, as was the custom. He's delighted to learn this is Odysseus's son. He loved Odysseus at Troy. They were friends. The old king talks and talks. He tells of Troy, of the Greek heroes, of their troubled journeys home. But he doesn't know where Odysseus is. Last he heard, he was alive. Nestor suggests Telemachus visit Menelaus in Sparta. He might know more. He sends his own son Pisistratus as companion. They travel by chariot across the countryside. Menelaus's palace is stunning. Gold, silver, amber, ivory everywhere. The king welcomes these young travelers to his table, still not knowing who they are. And there is Helen. The face that launched 1,000 ships, now back with her husband, Queen of Sparta again. She's still beautiful. She notices Telemachus looks familiar. That must be Odysseus's son, she says. He looks just like him. The same eyes, the same hands. And suddenly everyone is weeping, remembering the war, remembering the dead. Menelaus has wonderful stories about Odysseus. How he snuck into Troy disguised as a beggar. How he kept the Greeks silent inside the wooden horse. The man was brilliant. Menelaus tells how he learned of Odysseus's fate. He'd wrestled the shape, shifting sea god Proteus on an Egyptian beach. Proteus told him Odysseus was alive, trapped by alive. His father is alive. For the first time in his life, Telemachus has real hope. Not just faith, but confirmation. Odysseus exists somewhere out there. Back in Ithaca, the suitors are furious that Telemachus slipped away. The boy is getting bold. They decide to set an ambush and kill him when he returns. Penelope overhears their plot. Now she might lose her son too. It's too much. She retreats to her room and weeps, praying to Athena for protection. Athena sends her a dream. Don't worry, it says. Your son is protected by a goddess. He'll return safely. And something wonderful is about to happen. Meanwhile, Zeus sends Hermes across the ocean to Calypso's island. The messenger god flies on winged sandals, carrying an order the nymph won't want to hear. Calypso's cave is beautiful beyond words, fire of cedar and juniper burning, vines heavy with grapes, clear springs flowing. But Hermes brings bitter news. You cruel gods, she cries. You're jealous when goddesses love mortal men. But fine, I'll let him go. What choice do I have against Zeus's command? She finds Odysseus in his usual spot, weeping on the rocks. His eyes are always red now, always staring toward home. 7 years of this, day after day. You can go, she tells him. Build a raft and sail home. I'll give you supplies and fair winds. He can't believe it. He literally cannot believe it. Is this a trick? After so many disappointments, Odysseus is wary. She swears on the river Styx, the most binding oath there is, that she means no harm. Finally, he believes her. For 4 days he builds his raft. He's done this before, many times. Cutting timber, drilling holes, weaving rope. His hands remember the work even when his mind is elsewhere. Calypso gives him bread and wine, water and dried meat. She gives him fine clothes. She tells him how to navigate by the stars. She still loves him, even now. On the 5th day she sends him off with a gentle breeze. He sails east toward home. After 7 years of captivity he's finally free. Or is he? Poseidon has been away, visiting distant lands. When he returns and sees Odysseus sailing happily across his ocean, the god's fury is absolute. Not on my sea, he roars. He gathers clouds from all directions. East wind, west wind, north and south. He whips the ocean into a frenzy. Waves like mountains. Wind that screams. Odysseus's raft is torn apart. He's thrown into the churning sea. For a moment, he wishes he'd died at Troy with honor. A sea goddess named Ino takes pity on him. Take this veil, she says. It will keep you from drowning. When you reach land, throw it back into the sea. For 2 days and nights, Odysseus swims, His arms burn, his legs cramp, salt water fills his mouth. But he keeps swimming. He will not die here. Athena intervenes, calming the winds. She guides him toward the island of the Phaeacians. Finally, he sees land. But the coastline is all cliffs and crashing waves. He's dashed against the rocks, skin scraped raw. He searches desperately for a beach, a river mouth, anywhere he can land. The sea wants to kill him even now. Finally, a river mouth. He swims up into calmer water and collapses on the beach. He has nothing. No clothes, no food, no strength. But he's alive. He crawls under a thick olive bush, covers himself with leaves, and falls into a sleep like death. Athena seals his eyes with rest. He's going to need it. That night, Athena visits Nausicaa in her dreams. Why don't you go wash clothes tomorrow? The dream suggests. You should look nice. You might meet a husband soon. In the morning, Nausicaa convinces her father to give her a wagon. She takes her handmaidens to the river to wash clothes. None of them know what they'll find there. They wash the linens, spreading them on the warm rocks to dry. Then they bathe themselves and oil their skin. Then they play ball while waiting. Athena guides the ball astray. It lands in the river with a splash. The girl's shriek of laughter wakes Odysseus from his deep sleep. Imagine what they saw. A wild man, naked, covered in salt and dirt, emerging from the bushes. The girls scattered like frightened birds. All except Nausicaa. Something gave her courage. Athena, probably. She stood her ground as this stranger spoke to her from a respectful distance, covering himself with a branch. Are you a goddess or mortal? He asks. If mortal, your parents must be proud. Blessed is the man who'll marry you. He's filthy and desperate, but his words are perfect. Nausicaa is charmed. She orders her maidens to stop hiding. Give this man food. Give him oil to wash with. Give him clothes. He's clearly been through something terrible. When Odysseus emerges from bathing, he looks like a different man. Athena makes him taller, stronger, his hair curling like hyacinths. Nausicaa can't help but stare. She gives him directions to the palace and advice on approaching her parents. But she can't be seen walking with him into town. People would talk. She has her reputation. The Phaeacian city is like nowhere he's ever been. Bronze walls, golden doors, gardens that bear fruit all year. These people are blessed by the gods. He goes straight to the queen, as Nausicaa advised. He kneels, grasps her knees. Help me get home, he begs. I've been wandering for so long. The king raises him up immediately. Sit, eat, rest. Tomorrow we'll ask your story. Tonight you're our guest. This is how civilized people treat strangers. They feast him like a king. After days of near drowning and starvation, he finally eats properly. The Phaeacians ask no questions. They simply give. After dinner, the blind bard Demodocus sings. He sings about the quarrel between Odysseus and Achilles at Troy. The stranger covers his face with his cloak. Weeping. Alcinous notices. He changes the subject, calling for athletic games tomorrow. But he's curious now. Who is this man who weeps at songs of Troy? The next day brings games. Running, wrestling, boxing, discus. The Phaeacian young men show off. One of them taunts Odysseus. You don't look like an athlete. Old man. Odysseus picks up the heaviest discus and throws it far beyond everyone else's mark. Don't test me, he says. I've been through more than you can imagine. That evening Odysseus asks Demodocus to sing about the wooden horse, his own greatest trick. And once again, he can't hold back tears. The memory overwhelms him. Alcinous has had enough mystery. Who are you, stranger? Why do these songs make you weep? What happened to you? It's time for the truth. I am Odysseus, son of Laertes. My home is Ithaca. I'm known to all men for my cunning. My fame reaches heaven. And this is my story. Now Odysseus tells his tale. After Troy fell, he sailed for home with 12 ships and hundreds of men. It should have been a simple voyage. It was anything but. Their first stop was Ismarus, city of the Cyclones. They raided it, as warriors did back then. They took treasure and women. Odysseus said they should leave quickly. But his men wanted to celebrate. They stayed to feast and drink the stolen wine. A big mistake. By morning, reinforcements arrived. The Cyclones counterattacked. They fought all day. 6 men from each ship died before they could escape. Their first battle after Troy, and already they'd lost over 70 companions. Then Zeus sent a storm that blew them off course for 9 days. 9 days of terror, sails torn, men bailing water, no idea where they were going. They landed among the lotus eaters. These people seemed harmless. They offered the sailors their food, sweet lotus flowers. Just a taste, they said. Anyone who ate the lotus forgot everything. Home duty, their own names. They just wanted to stay and eat more flowers forever. A gentle oblivion. Odysseus had to drag these men by force, tie them under the rowing benches. He ordered everyone else not to eat the flowers. Sometimes saving people means being harsh. Next came the land of the Cyclopes. One-eyed giants who lived alone, tending sheep, caring nothing for laws or other people. Odysseus wanted to explore. He took 12 of his best men into a cave full of sheep and cheese. His men wanted to grab supplies and leave. But Odysseus was curious. He wanted to meet the owner. The owner came home at evening. Polyphemus was enormous. He rolled a boulder across the cave mouth that 20 wagons couldn't move. They were trapped. When the giant saw them, he didn't welcome them as guests. "Who are you?" he growled. Strangers meant nothing to him. He grabbed 2 men and ate them raw. He smashed them against the floor like puppies, then tore them apart and ate them, bones and all. The Greeks could only watch in horror. Their weapons were useless against him. That night, trapped in the dark with a monster, Odysseus thought. They couldn't kill the giant in his sleep, because then they'd never move the boulder. They needed him alive. The next evening, after the giant ate 2 more men, Odysseus offered him wine. Strong wine, undiluted. The Cyclops had never tasted anything like it. More, the giant demanded. "What's your name, little man? If you tell me, I'll give you a guest gift." Odysseus smiled. "My name is Nobody," he said. The giant laughed. "Then I'll eat nobody last. That's your gift." Then he passed out, vomiting wine and human flesh. Odysseus moved quickly. They'd found a great wooden club in the cave, big as a ship's mast. They'd sharpened it and hidden it. Now they heated its tip in the fire until it glowed. Together, they drove that burning stake into the giant's single eye. They twisted it like a drill. The eye hissed and bubbled. Polyphemus woke screaming. His screams shook the cave. He yanked out the stake and roared for help. Other Cyclopes came running. "Who's hurting you, Polyphemus? Who's in your cave?" "Nobody," he screamed.
Nobody is killing me.
"Well, if nobody's hurting you," they said, "then pray to your father Poseidon." And they left. The trick had worked. In the morning, the blind giant moved the boulder to let his sheep out. He sat at the entrance, feeling every sheep's back. No man would escape on a sheep's back. But Odysseus had tied his men underneath the biggest rams. The giant felt the woolly backs and let them pass. One by one, they slipped out to freedom. They reached their ship, loaded the sheep, and rowed frantically for open water. Behind them, the blinded giant stumbled onto the rocks, screaming with rage. And here's where Odysseus made his terrible mistake. Pride. He couldn't resist taunting the monster. "If anyone asks who blinded you," he shouted,
Tell them it was Odysseus.
The giant threw a boulder that nearly sank them. Then he prayed to his father Poseidon. "Make Odysseus suffer. Let him lose all companions. Let him find trouble at home." And he answered. From that moment, the sea god dedicated himself to Odysseus's suffering. One moment of pride would cost him 10 more years. They sailed on to the island of Aeolus, keeper of the winds. This god liked Odysseus. He entertained him for a month, then gave him a wonderful gift. All the contrary winds, tied up in an oxide bag. Only the west wind left free to blow them straight home. "Don't open this bag," Aeolus warned. "Guard it carefully." For 9 days they sailed. On the 10th day, they could see Ithaca. The cooking fires on shore, they were almost home. Odysseus, exhausted, finally let himself sleep. His men had been eyeing that bag for days. What treasure was their captain hiding? While he slept, they opened it. Just a peek. just to see what was inside. All the winds burst out at once. A hurricane that blew them all the way back to Ulysses Island. 10 days of sailing erased. They'd have to start over. Odysseus begged Aeolus for another chance, but the god refused. "You're cursed by the gods," he said. "I won't help someone heaven hates. Get out." With no friendly wind, they had to row. For 6 days they rowed, their spirits as heavy as their arms. What else could go wrong? They found a harbor surrounded by cliffs like a cup. All the ships sailed in except Odysseus's. Something told him to anchor outside. That instinct saved his life. The Laestrygonians were giants, worse than cyclopes. They lined the cliffs and hurled boulders down onto the trapped ships. It was like spearing fish in a bowl. 11 ships destroyed. Hundreds of men killed or captured and eaten. Odysseus cut his anchor rope and fled. Only his single ship escaped. From 12 ships to 1. From hundreds of companions to fewer than 50. The cost of this journey was becoming unbearable. But they had to keep going. They came to Aea, Circe's island. For 2 days they just lay on the beach, exhausted and grieving. Then Odysseus saw smoke rising from the forest interior. He sent half his men to investigate. They found a stone house in a clearing, surrounded by wolves and lions who acted strangely tame. Inside, a woman was singing. Circe welcomed them warmly. She fed them cheese and wine mixed with honey. They ate eagerly, not knowing what was in the food. Only one man stayed outside, suspicious. When they'd eaten, she struck them with her wand. Their bodies twisted. Snouts sprouted. Bristles covered their skin. They were pigs, but their minds remained human. Eurylochus, who'd stayed outside, saw everything. He ran back and told Odysseus, "A witch has turned our friends into pigs. We need to leave this island now." "Leave." Odysseus grabbed his sword. "I don't leave my men." He walked into the forest alone, toward the witch's house. Either he'd save them or join them. On the path, he met a young man, Hermes in disguise. "Take this herb," the god said. "It's called moly. It will protect you from her magic. Then draw your sword." Circe tried her spell. "Now become a pig," she commanded. Nothing happened. Odysseus drew his sword and rushed at her. She screamed and fell at his knees. "You must be Odysseus," she said. "I was warned you'd come." She swore great oaths not to harm him. Then she transformed his men back to human form. His men became human again, younger and more handsome than before. They wept with joy. Circe invited them all to stay, rest, rebuild their strength. They stayed a year. A whole year of feasting and recovery. After all they'd suffered, they needed time to heal. But eventually, his men reminded Odysseus of home. Circe told him he couldn't go home directly. First, he had to visit the underworld. He needed to consult the dead prophet Tiresias to learn his fate. They sailed to the edge of the world, where the sun never shines. A land of mist and shadow at the boundary between living and dead. Following Circe's instructions, Odysseus dug a pit and filled it with the blood of sacrificed sheep. The dead are drawn to blood. It lets them speak. Ghosts came from everywhere. Old women, warriors, brides, children. So many dead, all wanting to drink. Odysseus held them back with his sword, waiting for Tiresias. The first ghost he recognized was Elpenor, one of his own men. He'd died just days ago, falling drunk from Circe's roof. His body was still unburied. "Bury me, Captain," the ghost begged. "Don't leave me forgotten." Even in death, the rituals mattered. Odysseus promised. He'd return and give his man proper honors. Then came Tiresias, the blind prophet. He drank deeply from the blood and spoke. His prophecy was not encouraging. "Poseidon hates you," Tiresias said. "You'll reach home, but not easily. Don't harm the cattle of the sun god. If you do, you'll lose everything and everyone." Then Odysseus saw his mother's ghost, Anticlea. He hadn't even known she'd died. She'd been alive when he left for Troy 20 years ago. She told him she'd died of grief, waiting for him. "Longing for you killed me," she said. "Your gentleness, your kindness. I couldn't bear missing you anymore." 3 times he tried to embrace her. 3 times she slipped through his arms like shadow. Is this what death does to us? We become untouchable, unreachable. Then came the ghosts of famous women. Tyro, Antiope, Alcmene, the mother of Heracles. Queens and princesses of legend, each with her own tragic story. The ghost of Agamemnon came, the great king murdered by his own wife when he came home from Troy. Trust no woman, he warned Odysseus bitterly. Even Achilles appeared, the greatest warrior of them all. Odysseus tried to comfort him. You're honored like a god among the dead. But Achilles shook his head. I'd rather be a poor farmer's slave in the land of the living, Achilles said, than king of all these dead. Glory means nothing here. Only life matters. Ajax, who'd killed himself after losing to Odysseus in a contest, wouldn't even speak to him. Some grudges last beyond death. Some wounds never heal. Finally, fear drove them away. Too many ghosts, pressing closer. They ran back to the ship and sailed as fast as they could from that terrible shore. They returned to Circe's island. Odysseus buried Elpenor properly, keeping his promise. Then Circe told him what dangers lay ahead on his road home. First, you'll pass the sirens. Their song drives men mad. Plug your men's ears with wax. If you want to hear them yourself, have your men tie you to the mast. Then comes Scylla, who'll take 6 of your men. There's no fighting her. Just row past as fast as you can. Better to lose 6 than lose everyone to Charybdis. And whatever you do, don't touch the cattle of the sun god Helios. They graze on the island of Thrinacia. Touch them and you all die. Every single one of you. They sailed toward the Sirens' island. Odysseus had his men plug their ears with wax. Then they tied him firmly to the mast. He would hear the song. The Sirens' voices were impossibly beautiful. They promised knowledge, wisdom, everything he'd ever wanted to know. Odysseus strained against his ropes, begging to be released. Untie me, he screamed. Let me go to them. But his men couldn't hear him. They only rowed harder as he'd ordered. And they passed safely. Next came the strait between Scylla and Charybdis. On one side, a whirlpool that could swallow ships whole. On the other, a cliff hiding something worse. Scylla struck faster than lightning. 6 heads, 6 mouths, 6 of his men snatched up and devoured, while the others watched helplessly. They screamed his name as they died. It was the worst thing Odysseus ever saw. But there was nothing he could do. Some battles can't be won. They reached the island of the sun god's cattle. Odysseus remembered Circe's warning. We shouldn't even land here, he said. But his men were exhausted. He made them swear an oath. No matter what, don't touch those cattle. They agreed. They'd survive on the food from the ship. How hard could it be? Then the south wind began to blow. It never stopped. For a month, they were trapped on that island. Their supplies ran out. They began to starve. Odysseus went inland to pray for help. The gods gave him no answer but sleep. While he slept, his men made their fatal choice. Eurylochus talked them into it. Better to die at sea than starve here, he said. At least we'll have one good meal. They killed and roasted the sacred cattle. Odysseus smelled the meat before he saw them. He found them feasting, already doomed. What have you done? He cried. But it was too late. For 6 days they ate. Strange omens appeared. The cattle hides crawled. The meat on the spits bellowed. The gods were watching, and they were not pleased. Helios complained to Zeus. Those men ate my cattle. Punish them, or I'll take my light to the underworld and shine for the dead instead of the living. When the wind finally changed, they sailed immediately. For a moment, they thought they might escape. They were wrong. Zeus sent a thunderbolt. One strike that shattered the ship into splinters. Every man was thrown into the churning sea. None of them would surface alive. Only Odysseus survived, clinging to a piece of the mast. All his men, every last one, were dead. He was completely alone now. The currents carried him back toward Charybdis. As the whirlpool sucked down his mast, he grabbed a fig tree growing from the cliff and hung on for hours. When Charybdis spat the mast back up, he dropped onto it and paddled frantically away. He'd escaped by luck and determination, nothing more. For 9 days he drifted. No food, no water, no hope, just the endless sea and sky. This is how the gods found him. This is how he came to Calypso. And you know the rest of that part. 7 years with Calypso. Then the raft, Poseidon's storm, and finally here, among the Phaeacians. Odysseus finishes his tale. The Phaeacian court sits in stunned silence. What a story. What a journey. And it isn't over yet. King Alcinous promises Odysseus a ship and escort home. They load it with treasure beyond anything Odysseus brought from Troy. These people are genuinely good. At twilight, Odysseus boards the magical Phaeacian ship. They spread a blanket for him on the deck. He lies down and instantly falls into a deep, sweet sleep. The ship flies across the water faster than any hawk. Odysseus sleeps through the whole journey. After all he's been through, he finally rests peacefully. They lay him gently on a sandy beach, still sleeping, surrounded by all the treasure they gave him. Then they sail away. He's home. He's finally home. When Odysseus wakes, he doesn't recognize where he is. Athena has covered the island in mist. He actually thinks the Phaeacians have abandoned him somewhere strange. A young shepherd appears. Odysseus, being Odysseus, immediately lies about who he is. He invents an elaborate story about being a Cretan fugitive. The shepherd laughs and transforms into Athena herself. "You incorrigible liar," she says fondly. "You're finally home and still you make up stories. That's why I love you." They hide his treasure in a cave. Then Athena tells him what's been happening at home. The suitors, over 100 of them, eating his food, pressuring his wife. She transforms him into an aged beggar. Wrinkled skin, gray hair, ragged clothes. His own mother wouldn't recognize him. Now he can spy on his enemies. Athena sends him to Eumaeus, his old swineherd. She'll bring Telemachus there too. First, Odysseus needs to see who's still loyal after 20 years. Eumaeus welcomes this stranger without hesitation. "Come in, old man, share my fire, my food." Zeus protects beggars and strangers. His loyalty is beautiful. The swineherd talks about his lost master. What a man he was. "I'll never have another master like him." Odysseus, in disguise, listens to his own eulogy. Meanwhile, Athena has visited Telemachus in Sparta. "Go home now," she warned. "The suitors are planning to ambush you. Sail at night, land away from town." Telemachus comes straight to Eumaeus's hut, just as Athena planned. The loyal swineherd weeps to see him safe. He'd heard about the ambush and feared the worst. Telemachus notices the old beggar. "Who's this, Eumaeus?" "A guest," the swineherd says. "He claims to know something about your father." Father and son, face to face. Athena arranges for Eumaeus to leave. "Go tell Penelope her son's home safe." And suddenly Odysseus and Telemachus are alone together for the first time. Athena appears at the doorway. Only Odysseus can see her. She touches him with her golden wand. Now she says, "Show your son who you really are." The rags fall away. Odysseus stands before his son as he truly is. Telemachus backs away, terrified. "You must be a god," he says. "No mortal could change like that." "I'm no god. I'm your father. I'm home." They embrace, weeping together like sea eagles whose chicks were stolen. 20 years of separation finally ended. But there's no time for celebration. Over 100 suitors wait in their home. Father and son begin to plan. This will require all of Odysseus's cunning. The next day, disguised again as a beggar, Odysseus enters his own home for the first time in 20 years. The suitors barely notice him. But someone recognizes him. Old Argos, his hunting dog, lying neglected on a dung heap. The dog lifts his head, wags his tail. After 20 years, he knows his master. Odysseus can't acknowledge him without giving himself away. He wipes away a tear and keeps walking. Argos, his long wait finally over, closes his eyes and dies. The suitors mock him, throw bread at him, kick at him. One of them, Antinous, hits him with a footstool. Odysseus endures it all, watching, waiting. The lion has entered the sheep pen. The suitors don't know it yet, but their deaths are sitting right there among them. For now, let the story rest. We'll continue soon. Now let's step back from the story itself. Let's talk about when and where this tale came from. The world that created the Odyssey was very different from ours. The Trojan War, if it happened at all, took place around 1200 years before Christ. That's the Bronze Age, a time of palace kingdoms and warrior kings. Troy was real, by the way. Archaeologists found its ruins in modern Turkey. Whether there was a war over a beautiful woman, we'll never know, but the city existed. The Greeks of that era were the Mycenaeans. They built fortress palaces, traded across the Mediterranean, and eventually collapsed for reasons we still debate. Around 1100 BC, their world fell apart. Palaces burned. Writing was forgotten. Population dropped. Historians call it the Bronze Age collapse. It was catastrophic. What followed was a dark age lasting centuries. The Greeks forgot how to write. They lived simpler lives. But they remembered their glorious past through stories. For 400 years, poets kept the old stories alive. They sang of Achilles and Agamemnon, of Troy and its fall. Each generation learned the tales and passed them on. These weren't written poems. They were memorized and performed. Bards trained for years, learning formulas and phrases that helped them remember thousands of lines. Every performance was slightly different. The basic story stayed the same, but details changed. The poems were alive, evolving with each telling. And then came Homer. Or did he? Here's the thing. We're not entirely sure Homer was a real person. He might have been. Or he might be a legend himself. Even in ancient times, 7 different cities claimed Homer as their native son. They couldn't agree on when he lived, whether he was blind, or if he existed at all. Most scholars today think there was a real poet, probably from Ionia, the Greek coast of modern Turkey, who lived around 700 BC, 400 years after Troy fell. This poet, whoever he was, composed the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Iliad tells of the Trojan War. The Odyssey tells of coming home. Together, they're the foundation of Western literature. Around Homer's time, the Greeks invented their alphabet, borrowing from the Phoenicians. For the first time in centuries, they could write things down. This changed everything. Someone, maybe Homer himself, wrote these poems down. The living tradition was frozen in place. What we have now is essentially that moment, captured in words. The poems became central to Greek culture. Every educated Greek knew them by heart. They were taught in schools, performed at festivals, quoted in arguments. Alexander the Great supposedly slept with the Iliad under his pillow. He saw himself as a new Achilles. Homer shaped how Greeks thought about heroism for 1,000 years. The Romans inherited Homer when they conquered Greece. They translated the poems, imitated them, built on them. Virgil's Aeneid is basically a Roman response to Homer. Through the Middle Ages, Byzantine monks kept copying the texts. That's how the Odyssey survived to reach us. Imagine how many copies were made over 2,000 years. When the Renaissance came, scholars fell in love with Homer all over again. They made new translations, new interpretations. The old story spoke to every generation. Here's something fascinating about how these poems were originally performed. A full recitation of the Odyssey takes about 24 hours. Nobody heard it all at once. At major festivals like the Panathenaea in Athens, different sections were performed over several days. People would come and go, catching the parts they loved best. That's why the poems have so many repeated phrases. Rosy-fingered dawn, wine-dark sea, swift-footed Achilles. These formulas helped bards remember thousands of verses. Different listeners heard different things in these stories. Warriors heard tales of glory. Women heard of faithful Penelope. Everyone found something that spoke to them. These weren't just public performances either. Families told these stories at home. Parents passed them to children. The Odyssey was Greece's bedtime story for centuries. During Homer's time, Greeks were colonizing the Mediterranean. They sailed to unknown shores, just like Odysseus. The poem spoke directly to their experience. These colonists understood the longing for home. The Odyssey gave voice to what they felt, far from Greece, wondering if they'd ever see their birthplace again. Sea travel was genuinely dangerous in the ancient world. Ships sank. Crews disappeared. The monsters in the Odyssey were how people made sense of the ocean's terrors. Every strange island Odysseus visits might represent real places Greeks encountered. The lotus eaters might be North Africans. The cyclopes might be Sicilians. We'll never know for sure. The gods in these stories were very real to the Greeks. They built temples to Poseidon, prayed before voyages, made sacrifices for safe passage. Religion and story intertwined. When Odysseus sacrifices to the gods, Greek audiences nodded in recognition. They did the same things. The story reinforced their religious practices. The concept of xenia, hospitality to strangers, was sacred. The suitors violate it terribly. The poem teaches that such violations bring divine punishment. Zeus himself protected guests and beggars. Mistreating a stranger was an offense against the king of gods. This wasn't just custom, it was religious law. By showing the suitors breaking every rule of hospitality, Homer justifies their eventual slaughter. They weren't just rude. They were sinners against divine law. The Odyssey shows us domestic life in ancient Greece. Women managed the household while men were away. Penelope's weaving wasn't just symbolic, it was real work. Penelope runs a large estate. She manages slaves, oversees production, handles disputes. Greek women had more power in the home than we sometimes imagine. We should acknowledge the uncomfortable parts too. Slavery was normal in ancient Greece. Eumaeus and Euryclea are slaves. The poem treats their loyalty as admirable, not their bondage as wrong. Ancient Greece was deeply hierarchical. Birth determined much of your fate. The Odyssey reflects this, even as it shows a king disguised as a beggar. The heroes eat a lot of meat, roasted beef, pork, mutton. This was elite food in ancient Greece. Most people lived on grain and vegetables. Meat meant wealth. When Odysseus builds his raft, Homer describes the process in detail. The poet knew how ships were made. These practical details ground the fantasy in reality. Interestingly, the poems mix Bronze Age and Iron Age details. Some weapons are bronze, some iron. This tells us the stories evolved over centuries. Scholars have debated for centuries whether one poet wrote both the Iliad and Odyssey. They're quite different in tone. The Odyssey is gentler, more interested in domestic life. The Iliad is about war and death. The Odyssey is about survival and homecoming. Same world, very different focuses. Maybe the same poet aged between them. The Odyssey has far more important female characters than the Iliad. Athena, Penelope, Circe, Calypso, Nausicaa. Some scholars wonder if a woman had a hand in it. The poem clearly admires Penelope's cleverness. She's praised as much as Odysseus for her cunning. That's unusual for ancient literature. If Homer existed, he trained for years. Oral poets began learning in childhood. They memorized formulas, practiced improvisation, absorbed centuries of tradition. The Greeks believed poets were inspired by the muses, goddesses of art. The Odyssey begins by invoking the muse. Tell me of the man, it says. The poet is just a channel. The tradition that Homer was blind might be symbolic. Blind people in Greek culture were thought to have inner sight. They saw truths others missed. The blind bard Demodocus in the Odyssey might be Homer's self-portrait. He's honored, respected, given the best seat at the feast. Maybe Homer was telling us how bards should be treated. The text we have today was standardized by scholars at the Library of Alexandria around 200 BC. They compared different versions and created the official text. Even in ancient times, people argued about which parts were really Homer's. Some lines seemed added later. Some passages didn't quite fit. The debate continues today. Archaeology has confirmed many details Homer got right. The boar, tusk helmets, the palace layouts, certain weapons. The poems preserved real memories of the Bronze Age. Heinrich Schliemann used Homer as a guide to find Troy in the 1870s. He believed the poems were history. He was at least partly right. Schliemann found not one Troy but 9, built on top of each other over millennia. The Troy of the Trojan War is probably level 6 or 7. History is complicated. Nestor's palace at Pylos has been excavated. It matches Homer's descriptions remarkably well. The poets remembered things that had been lost for centuries. The Bronze Age Mediterranean was connected by trade. Egypt, Phoenicia, Greece, Anatolia. Ideas and stories traveled with goods. The Odyssey reflects this connected world. Many Odyssey episodes have parallels in other cultures. The encounter with the dead appears in Gilgamesh. Sea monsters show up everywhere. Stories travel and transform. As Greek culture spread, Homer went with it. Alexander's armies brought the poems to Egypt and Persia. Everywhere Greeks went, the Odyssey followed. For Romans, knowing Homer was essential to being educated. A gentleman quoted Homer. A senator referenced the Odyssey in speeches. It was cultural currency. When Christianity came, some wondered if pagan poems should be preserved. But Homer was too valuable. Monks kept copying, even if the content was problematic. Medieval readers found Christian allegories in Homer. Odysseus's journey became the soul's journey to God. Every generation reads its own concerns into the text. When Constantinople fell in 1453, scholars fled west carrying manuscripts. Homer reached Italy just as the Renaissance was beginning. Perfect timing. For the first time in centuries, Western Europeans could read Homer in the original Greek. New translations appeared. New interpretations flourished. The printing press changed everything. Now Homer could reach thousands, then millions. The Odyssey became a book anyone might own, not just scholars and monks. Enlightenment thinkers analyzed Homer critically. They questioned authorship, compared manuscripts, looked for the real history behind the myths. Modern scholarship was born. Romantic poets saw Homer differently. They loved the wildness, the passion, the connection to nature. Keats wrote a famous sonnet about first reading Homer in translation. Victorian educators used Homer to teach character. Odysseus modeled perseverance. Telemachus showed filial duty. Penelope demonstrated wifely virtue, moral lessons everywhere. In the 1930s, scholar Milman Parry traveled to Yugoslavia to study living oral poets. He proved that Homer's techniques matched living oral traditions. Revolutionary. Parry showed that oral poets don't memorize word for word. They learn patterns and formulas, then compose in performance. This is likely how Homer worked. Today, scholars use computers to analyze Homer's patterns. They track repeated phrases, map story structures, search for hidden clues. The investigation never ends. The Greeks also staged scenes from Homer. Though no complete Odyssey plays survive, we know playwrights dramatized episodes. The stories moved between forms easily. Greek vase painters loved Homer too. Scenes of Odysseus with the sirens in Polyphemus's cave, returning home. People lived with these images daily. Roman mosaics often depicted Homeric scenes. Wealthy families walked on pictures of Odysseus. The stories decorated their homes, their lives, their imaginations. Renaissance painters returned to Homer constantly. Odysseus and the sirens. Circe with her cup. Penelope at her loom. These were prestige subjects. Victorian artists like Waterhouse, whose style we've been using tonight, painted haunting Odyssey scenes. His sirens are beautiful and terrifying. Art keeps reinterpreting Homer. Sculptors too have shaped Odysseus in marble and bronze for millennia. His face has been imagined countless ways. Each generation sees him differently. What Homer started continues today. We still gather to hear stories, whether around fires or screens. The human need for narrative hasn't changed in 3,000 years. The Odyssey has been translated into virtually every written language. Japanese, Swahili, Icelandic, Hindi. Odysseus speaks to everyone everywhere. Each translation is an interpretation. Some are archaic and formal. Some are modern and colloquial. The same Greek lines become very different English poems. Recently, women have translated Homer more than ever before. Emily Wilson's Odyssey brought fresh attention to women's experiences in the poem. New translators find new meanings. Homer isn't unique. Every culture has its epic traditions. African griots, Native American storytellers, Indian recitations of the Ramayana. Humans everywhere preserve stories this way. Joseph Campbell found the same story patterns across cultures. The hero's journey. Departure, trials, return. Odysseus follows this pattern perfectly. So do countless other heroes. Psychologists have read the Odyssey as an inner journey. The monsters are our fears. The temptations are our desires. Home is self-knowledge. The poem works on many levels. Feminist scholars have reclaimed the Odyssey's women, Penelope's strategic genius, Circe's independent power, Helena's survivor. The poem has more to say about women than first appears. Post-colonial critics see imperialism in the poem. Greeks encountering strange peoples, conquering, moving on. The primitive, Cyclops versus civilized Greeks. Every era reads differently. Even environmentalists find meaning here. The sacred cattle of the sun. The respect for natural forces. Poseidon's power over the sea. Ancient wisdom about living with nature. For refugees and immigrants, the Odyssey speaks directly to their experience. The longing for home. The uncertain wandering. The hope of return. Homer understands exile. Veterans often find deep meaning in the Odyssey. The difficulty of returning from war. The distance from loved ones. The way home feels foreign. Homer knew about trauma. Older readers see the Odyssey as a meditation on life itself. The long journey. The trials endured. The hope of peaceful arrival. It speaks to universal human experience. And children love the adventure. Cyclops and sirens. Magic and monsters. The simple thrill of a good story. Homer works at every age. The best part is sharing it. Grandparents who loved it passing it to grandchildren. The story becoming part of family tradition. Homer would appreciate that. Scholars still gather to discuss Homer. New papers every year. New theories, new discoveries, new arguments. After nearly 3,000 years, we're still not done. Archaeology keeps revealing new finds. Bronze Age shipwrecks, palace archives. Artifacts that confirm or challenge Homer's details. The investigation continues. Some things haven't changed. The stars Odysseus navigated by are the same stars visible tonight. The wine, dark sea still surrounds those rocky Greek islands. Greek fishermen still sail those waters in small boats. They still know the dangers, the sudden storms, the rocky coasts. The Mediterranean hasn't changed much. You can visit Ithaca today. It's a real island. Rocky and small, just as Homer described. Tourists come seeking Odysseus's homeland. Some feel they've found it. The wine dark sea. People still debate what Homer meant by that color. Purple, deep blue, red tinged. Go there at sunset, and you might see what he saw. Olive trees still grow there, gnarled and ancient. Some might be descended from trees Homer knew. The Mediterranean landscape persists across millennia. When you read the Odyssey, you're connecting with minds across nearly 3,000 years. The poet who composed it. The scribes who copied it. Every reader who came before. Think of all the people who loved this poem. Greek children, Roman senators, medieval monks, Renaissance princes, Victorian schoolboys. Now you're part of that chain. New translations keep appearing because each generation wants its own Odyssey. The poem keeps being reborn in new languages, new styles, new voices. Countless writers have been inspired by Homer. Dante, Shakespeare, Joyce, Walcott. The Odyssey isn't just a book, it's a creative wellspring that never runs dry. Filmmakers, novelists, poets, songwriters. They all return to Homer. The stories are infinitely adaptable. Every medium finds something useful there. Why does Homer last? Because the themes are eternal. Wanting to go home, missing the people we love. Facing dangers with courage. Finding out who we really are. Everyone understands the longing for home. Whether you've been away for 20 years or 20 days, that feeling of finally arriving is universal. Love that survives separation. Trust that endures doubt. Partnership that weathers any storm. Odysseus and Penelope speak to anyone who's loved across distance. The relationship between parent and child, especially when one has been absent. Telemachus growing up without knowing his father. These are timeless human situations. Facing fears. Pushing through when everything seems impossible. Finding strength you didn't know you had. Odysseus models this again and again. Making hard choices. Sacrificing some to save others. Accepting losses that can't be avoided. The Odyssey doesn't shy away from life's difficult decisions. Resisting temptation. Odysseus could have stayed with Calypso forever, immortal in paradise. He chose mortality and home instead. That says something profound. The Greeks believed we learn through suffering. Odysseus suffers more than almost anyone. By the end, he's wiser for it. Pain as teacher is an uncomfortable truth. The poem explores justice and mercy. Some suitors are worse than others. Some servants are treacherous. Who deserves punishment? The answers aren't always clear. And perhaps most fundamentally, the Odyssey is about storytelling itself. Odysseus survives partly because he tells good stories. Narrative is power, words save. When Odysseus tells his tale to the Phaeacians, he enchants them. They give him everything he needs to get home. His stories literally earn his passage. The Odyssey is a poem full of other stories. Nested tales within tales. It knows it's a story about the importance of stories. Very sophisticated for nearly 3,000 years ago. Every time someone reads a story to a child at bedtime, they're continuing what Homer did. Helping humans process the world through narrative. Making sense of life through story. Rosy-fingered dawn. That's how Homer described the sunrise. It's still beautiful. It still makes us pause. Some poetic images are simply perfect. There's always more to discover in Homer. Every reading reveals something new. Details you missed. Connections you hadn't seen. The poem rewards lifetime study. Whoever Homer was, his voice still reaches us. 3,000 years of silence can't muffle it. Some things are too good to die. That's the world that created the Odyssey. Ancient and familiar. Strange and recognizable. A world we can visit through words whenever we choose. The Odyssey's influence began immediately and never stopped. Let's talk about how this ancient story has been reimagined, adapted, and transformed across 3 millennia. Virgil wrote the Aeneid around 20 BC, directly responding to Homer. His hero Aeneas is a Trojan who survives the war and sails to found Rome. Sound familiar? Aeneas visits the underworld just like Odysseus. He meets his father's ghost, learns his destiny. Virgil shows you can't write epic without Homer's shadow. Dante's Divine Comedy continues the tradition. Virgil guides Dante through hell, just as Athena guides Odysseus. The chain of influence stretches across centuries. Dante actually puts Odysseus in hell, punished for his deceptions. He imagines a final voyage beyond the known world. Medieval Christians had complicated feelings about pagan heroes. Shakespeare knew his Homer through translations. Troilus and Cressida is set during the Trojan War. His heroes and villains owe debts to Greek originals. Milton's Paradise Lost follows Homer's epic conventions. The invocation to the muse. The beginning and the middle of things. The grand scope. Homer wrote the manual. Alexander Pope's 18th century translation made Homer accessible to English readers. His elegant rhyming couplets shaped how generations imagined the ancient world. Keats wrote a famous sonnet about reading Homer in translation. Much have I traveled in the realms of gold. The poem captures the thrill of discovering great literature. Tennyson wrote a dramatic monologue for an aged Odysseus. To strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. He turned the wanderer into a symbol of restless ambition. James Joyce's Ulysses reimagines the entire Odyssey in a single day in Dublin, 1904. Leopold Bloom wanders the city like Odysseus wandered the sea. Bloom is no warrior. He's an advertising canvasser, a cuckold, a wanderer through his own city. Joyce finds epic in the everyday, heroism in ordinary survival. Molly Bloom is Joyce's Penelope. Her final monologue, unpunctuated and flowing, is one of literature's great achievements. Yes, I said yes, I will, yes. Stephen Dedalus is the Telemachus figure, searching for a spiritual father. Joyce shows how Homer's patterns keep appearing in new forms. Greek writer Nikos Kazantzakis wrote a massive sequel, imagining Odysseus leaving home again. His restless hero can't stay settled. Some journeys never end. Derek Walcott's Omeros sets Homeric echoes in the Caribbean. Fishermen become heroes. The sea connects islands like it connected ancient Greece. Homer goes global. Margaret Atwood's Penelopiad lets Penelope tell her own story from the underworld. What was she really thinking all those years? Atwood gives her voice. Madeline Miller's Circe turns the witch into a full character with her own story. Odysseus is just a visitor in her long immortal life. Perspective changes everything. Recent novels keep finding new angles. Pat Barker tells the Trojan War from captive women's perspectives. The same events look very different from below. Cinema discovered Homer early. Silent films depicted Odysseus's adventures. The visual possibilities were irresistible. Cyclopes and sirens were made for the screen. The 1954 Ulysses, starring Kirk Douglas, brought Homer to mass audiences. Sword and sandal epics made ancient myths into popular entertainment. The Coen brothers' O Brother, Where Art Thou? Sets the Odyssey in Depression-era Mississippi. Chain gang escapes, blind prophets, sirens at a river, Homer Goes American. George Clooney's Everett is a fast, talking escaped convict trying to get home to his wife. He's just as clever and just as vain as the original. The parallels are delightful. Cold Mountain tells a Civil War soldier's journey home, directly paralleling the Odyssey. Ada waiting like Penelope. Immen wandering like Odysseus, America claims Homer. Television has adapted the Odyssey repeatedly. Miniseries allow the full scope of the journey. Armand Assante played Odysseus in a lavish 1997 production. Children's animations have introduced young audiences to Homer. Simplified but faithful, they plant seeds that bloom when readers encounter the original later. Science fiction loves Homer too. Space operas feature crews lost far from home, facing alien monsters. Star Trek owes obvious debts to the wandering hero pattern. Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey takes the journey concept to cosmic scale. Humanity's evolution is the ultimate voyage. The title acknowledges Homer directly. Video games have embraced Homer extensively. Assassin's Creed Odyssey lets players explore ancient Greece themselves. You become Odysseus, making choices, facing monsters. Fighting a Cyclops is different when you control the character. Games make the ancient stories visceral and immediate. A new generation discovers Homer through play. The game Hades features Odysseus as a character. Greek mythology has found enthusiastic new audiences through gaming. Interactive storytelling suits these tales well. Opera has embraced Homer since the art form began. Monteverdi's Return of Ulysses premiered in 1640. Music adds emotional dimensions words alone can't reach. Theaters worldwide stage the Odyssey regularly. Some productions are traditional. Others radically reinterpret. The story is flexible enough to support any approach. Some performers tell the entire Odyssey solo, returning to oral tradition. These marathon performances remind us how the poem was first experienced. Graphic novels have adapted Homer brilliantly. Gareth Hines created a stunning visual Odyssey. Sequential art captures the epic's visual potential. Japanese manga artists have interpreted Greek myths in their own style. Homer crosses cultural boundaries easily. Good stories don't need passports. Dance companies have choreographed the Odyssey, telling the story through movement. Martha Graham famously explored Greek myths. The body speaks what words cannot. Musicians have created concept albums inspired by Homer. Progressive rock bands especially love epic narratives. The Odyssey becomes sonic journey. Podcasts have revived audio storytelling. New productions tell Homer's tale for modern ears. We've come full circle to oral tradition, now digitized. Audiobook performances bring professional actors to Homer. Listening while commuting or falling asleep, people experience the poem as spoken word again. Refugee groups have performed the Odyssey, finding their own stories in it. When you've actually fled across dangerous seas, Homer speaks directly to you. Programs bring veterans together to read Homer. They recognize the difficulty of coming home from war. Literature becomes therapy. Understanding becomes healing. Prison reading programs use the Odyssey effectively. The longing for home, the hope of return, the long journey. Incarcerated readers find hope in ancient words. In universities worldwide, the Odyssey remains central to humanities education. Students from every background find something relevant. That's remarkable staying power. High school students often meet Homer for the first time in class. Some hate it initially. Many come to love it later. Seeds planted young grow over lifetimes. Children's versions introduce the wonder early. Simplified but vivid, they capture young imaginations. The Cyclops and Sirens never fail to fascinate. Families experience Homer together through films and shows. Parents explain context. Children ask questions. The story sparks conversation across generations. Contemporary artists still paint Homeric scenes. Each generation reinterprets visually. What Odysseus looks like changes with each artist's vision. Museums display Odyssey art from every era. Ancient vases beside modern sculptures. The visual tradition is as rich as the literary one. Even advertising borrows from Homer. Journey themes homecoming emotions, heroic imagery. Odysseus sells everything from cars to insurance. The myths are cultural shorthand. Politicians reference Homer when discussing perseverance, homecoming, or long journeys. The Odyssey provides metaphors everyone understands. Shared culture enables communication. Therapists use the Odyssey as metaphor for life journeys. Where are you on your voyage? What monsters have you faced? Ancient stories frame modern struggles. Self-help books draw on Odyssey wisdom. The hero's journey becomes personal development framework. Ancient myths package timeless advice. Business seminars analyze Odysseus as a leader. His resilience, his adaptability, his people management. Ancient heroes become case studies. Athletes find inspiration in Odysseus's perseverance. The refusal to quit. The long journey to victory. Sports narratives echo epic patterns constantly. Immigrant families see their own journeys reflected. Leaving home, facing dangers, hoping to belong somewhere. Homer speaks across cultures and centuries. Anyone living far from home understands Odysseus. The ache of distance, the sweet pain of memory. Homer articulates what homesickness feels like. Partners separated by work, by circumstance, by duty find comfort in Penelope and Odysseus. Love that waits. Trust that endures. Their story validates patience. Military families especially understand. A parent deployed far away. Children growing up in absence. The desperate longing to return. Homer knew this pain. For those in life's later stages, the Odyssey offers perspective. The long voyage behind. The home finally reached. The satisfaction of arrival. Those recovering from illness find strength in Odysseus. The body's journey through storm and calm. The persistence required. The hope of healing. Those grieving recognize the Odyssey's sorrows. Odysseus loses everyone, keeps going anyway. Loss doesn't end the journey. It becomes part of it. As climate change displaces people, the Odyssey gains new relevance. Environmental refugees understand being driven from home by forces beyond control. After global pandemic, themes of isolation and return resonate freshly. Being trapped away from loved ones. The joy of reunion. Homer speaks to now. Digital nomads working from anywhere might identify with Odysseus. Constant movement, no fixed home. Is the journey the point, or is arrival? In our globalized world, what is home anyway? Where we were born, where we live, where people wait for us. The Odyssey asks questions we still can't answer. Some find home in virtual communities now. Online spaces where they belong. Would Odysseus understand? Home is where people know you. Chosen families echo Homer's household. The loyal servants, the true friends. Blood isn't everything. Loyalty and love make family. Odysseus has many names, plays many roles. Nobody, the stranger, the beggar, the king. In an age of multiple online identities, this resonates. Odysseus lies constantly. Is that heroic or problematic? In our age of misinformation, his relationship with truth prompts uncomfortable reflection. The Odyssey is about who controls the narrative. Odysseus tells his own story. In our media age, that power matters more than ever. Modern retellings give voice to women Homer silenced. What did Penelope really think? What happened to Circe after Odysseus left? Gaps become opportunities. Post-colonial readings question the poem's assumptions. Who are the civilized ones really? The Greeks who raid and destroy, or the peoples they encounter? Some readers now see Polyphemus differently. A solitary figure attacked in his home. Disabled, then mocked. Perspective shapes sympathy. The sacred cattle episode reads as environmental parable. Take what isn't yours to take, face consequences. Nature has limits that must be respected. Homer's hospitality ethics challenge modern attitudes toward strangers. The suitors violated sacred guest right. Do we do better with refugees and immigrants? The suitors' slaughter troubles modern readers. Was it justice or massacre? The poem approves, but do we? Ancient and modern ethics clash. We can't ignore slavery in the poem. Eumaeus was kidnapped and sold. The maids are property. Reading Homer means confronting uncomfortable realities. Great literature survives criticism because it's rich enough to sustain multiple readings. The Odyssey has weathered every challenge for 3,000 years. New translations keep appearing because each generation needs its own Homer. The poem is constantly reborn in new words, new voices, new visions. What's next for Homer? Virtual reality Odysseys, AI-generated adaptations, interactive experiences we can't imagine. The story will find new forms. Imagine experiencing Odysseus's journey in virtual reality. Walking through Circe's palace, facing Scylla's teeth. Technology could make myth immediate. Perhaps future audiences will experience Homer through technologies we can't imagine. But the core will remain. A man trying to get home. That never ages. If humanity reaches other worlds, we'll take Homer with us. On Mars or beyond, people will still want stories about journeys and homecoming. Across every culture, language, and continent, people find meaning in the Odyssey. That universality is the surest sign of greatness. Scholars still argue about Homer passionately. That's a good sign. Dead texts don't inspire debate. The Odyssey remains vital because people care. Somewhere right now, a student is having their first breakthrough with Homer. That moment of connection across millennia. It happens every day, worldwide. Somewhere right now, someone is weeping at Argos the dog or Odysseus meeting his mother's ghost. The same passages that moved ancient Greeks still work. Somewhere a parent is explaining Odysseus to a curious child. The tradition continues. Each generation hands the story to the next. Empires have risen and fallen. Technologies have transformed the world. But Homer remains. Literature outlasts everything except the human need for stories. Odysseus himself has become a symbol. The crafty survivor. The longing wanderer. The faithful husband. He's larger than any single version now. Penelope, too, has become archetypal. Patient yet active. Faithful yet clever. She's influenced how we think about female heroism for millennia. The journey home may be the most universal story there is. Every culture, every era understands it. Homer captured something essentially human. We tell stories because we must. It's how we make sense of existence. Homer understood this 3,000 years ago. We're still proving him right. Call it the foundation of Western literature if you like. But really, it's just a really good story that people have loved for a very long time. People not yet born will discover Homer someday. They'll find the same wonder, the same meaning, the same comfort. The legacy extends forward forever. That's Homer's legacy. Not just influence on literature, though that's vast, but influence on how we understand ourselves. What it means to journey, what it means to come home. And now you're part of it too. By listening tonight, you've joined the long line of people who've been moved by this ancient tale. Somewhere Homer is still singing. His voice has just been traveling a very long time to reach you. 3,000 years, and still perfectly clear. That's the legacy, not just what was, but what still is, and what will be. Now let's bring our own journey to its close. We're nearing the end of our journey together. But before we rest, let me tell you how Odysseus's story finally concludes. He's earned his ending, and so have you. When we left Odysseus, he was disguised as a beggar in his own hall. The suitors mocked him, threw things at him. He watched and waited, learning their weaknesses. Penelope, perhaps sensing something, announces a contest. Whoever can string Odysseus's great bow and shoot through 12 axe heads will win her hand. Impossible for anyone but him. One by one, the suitors try. Not one can even string it. The bow requires strength they don't have, technique I never learned. It belonged to a greater man. The old beggar asks for a turn. The suitors laugh. What, let a vagabond try? But Telemachus insists, "Give the stranger the bow. Let him try." Odysseus takes the bow. He examines it lovingly, like meeting an old friend. Then, effortlessly, he strings it. The suitors' laughter dies in their throats. He fits an arrow, draws and shoots, through all 12 axe heads. A shot no one else could make. The suitors realize, too late, who stands before them. Odysseus throws off his rags. The beggar vanishes. The king of Ithaca stands before them, bow in hand, vengeance in his eyes. The reckoning has come. His first arrow takes Antinous through the throat. The ringleader falls, his wine cup spilling like blood. The others scramble for weapons that aren't there. Telemachus had secretly removed their weapons. Now father and son fight side by side, along with the swineherd and coward. 4 against over 100. Athena watches over them, deflecting spears, giving strength. The suitors don't stand a chance. This is divine justice being executed by mortal hands. When it's over, not one suitor survives. The great hall is filled with the dead. It's brutal, yes. But in Homer's world, this is justice. They violated every sacred law. The disloyal servants who'd helped the suitors face their own punishment. It's harsh by our standards. Ancient justice was different. Betrayal meant death. Old Euryclea runs to wake Penelope. "He's home," she cries. "Your husband is home. He's killed them all." But Penelope doesn't believe her. She's been fooled before. Penelope comes downstairs slowly. She sees a man who looks like Odysseus. But is it really him? Or another trick? She sits far away and stares. Telemachus scolds her. "Mother, embrace him." But Penelope is too clever for that. If this is really Odysseus, there's a test only he can pass. "Move his bed out of our room," she tells a servant. Just loud enough for the stranger to hear. And Odysseus reacts with shock. "Move the bed? Impossible." "That bed cannot be moved," he says. "I built it myself around a living olive tree. The trunk is the bedpost. Only Odysseus could know that. Only Penelope." Her knees go weak. She runs to him, throws her arms around his neck, weeps into his shoulder. It's really him. After 20 years, he's finally home. They hold each other like survivors of a shipwreck reaching shore. That's Homer's image. Two people who've weathered impossible storms, finally safe together. Athena holds back the dawn so they can have a longer night together. The goddess of wisdom understands what they need. Time. Just a little more time. They talk through the whole night. He tells her everything. She tells him of her years of waiting. 20 years of stories to share, a lifetime to catch up on. When rosy-fingered dawn finally comes, it brings a new beginning. The suitors are dead. The family is reunited. Order is restored to Ithaca. Odysseus still has one more reunion. His father Laertes, now old and broken, living in poverty on a farm. He's been mourning his son for 20 years. When Laertes finally believes it's really his son, he nearly faints with joy. 3 generations of this family, torn apart by war, finally together again. But it's not quite over. The suitors had families. Fathers and brothers who want revenge. They gather with weapons, marching toward Odysseus's farm. Just as battle seems inevitable, Athena intervenes. "Stop," she commands. "Enough blood has been spilled. Let there be peace." And there is. The poem ends with peace. Oaths are sworn. Old grievances are buried. Ithaca can finally heal. After 20 years of absence and violence, normal life can resume. And that's how the Odyssey ends. A family reunited, a kingdom restored, a wanderer finally at rest. After everything, Odysseus is home. It's a satisfying ending, isn't it? The good are rewarded. The wicked are punished. Love survives. Patience pays off. That's why we tell these stories. The journey has come full circle. From Ithaca to Troy, to the edges of the world and back again. 20 years to travel what should have taken weeks, but he made it. Think of everyone we've met tonight. Cunning Odysseus and faithful Penelope. Young Telemachus becoming a man. Athena with her gray eyes and helping hand. The monsters and marvels, one-eyed Polyphemus. Beautiful dangerous sirens, Circe with her wand, Calypso on her lonely paradise, each one unforgettable. The humble heroes too, old Euryclea. Poor Argos, who waited 20 years just to see his master one more time. Loyalty matters in this story. The wine dark sea that Homer loved so much. It's been the stage for all of this. Beautiful and dangerous, full of wonders and terrors, like life itself. And at the end of it all, home. Just a place where people who love you wait. That's all it really is. That's all it needs to be. You're in your own home right now. Wherever that is, you're there. The place you return to. The people who wait for you. Your own Ithaca. The same stars that guided Odysseus home are shining somewhere above you now. Some things don't change. Some things connect us across all of time. The story is ending now, but it doesn't really end. Homer's words wait patiently for the next reader, the next listener. They've waited 3,000 years. They can wait forever. I hope you've enjoyed our journey together. Through ancient seas and stranger shores. Through monsters and magic and finally home. If you're sleepy now, that's perfect. That was always the plan. Let Homer's ancient words carry you into good dreams. You've earned your rest. May Athena give you the same gift she gave Odysseus. Deep, sweet sleep. The kind that heals and restores. Gray-eyed goddess of wisdom watching over your rest. No storms tonight. Just calm seas and quiet stars. Poseidon's anger has faded. The wine-dark sea lies still and peaceful under the moon. Somewhere in the story, Odysseus and Penelope are sleeping too. In their bed built around an olive tree. Finally together, finally at peace. The world is quiet now. The heroes are resting. The monsters are sleeping in their caves. Even the gods have set aside their schemes for the night. Let the stars guide you into sleep, the way they guided Odysseus home. You know the way. You've always known. Home is never as far as it seems. Listen to the waves if you can imagine them. The soft rhythm of the eternal sea. It was old when Homer sang, and it sings still. Shush! Shush! Sleep. Remember the olive tree. Rooted deep, growing strong, giving shade and fruit for generations. That's what home is. Something that grows. Something that lasts. Good night, traveler. Your own Odyssey continues tomorrow. But tonight you rest. Tonight you're home. Let the wine, dark sea carry you to dreams. Sleep well. Dream of distant shores and safe harbors. Homer sang you to sleep tonight, as he's sung to sleepers for 3,000 years. Rest now, you're home.